Hi, good morning. How you doing? How's it going?
Thanks for having me in Rhode Island.
Yeah, I'm excited you're here.
Yeah.
When was the last time you came to Rhode Island?
Probably a couple months ago.
Yeah.
I saw a friend in Newport, but Maine's a nice place to be this time of year, so I spent a lot of time there.
Yeah.
So is here.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So be good if you all went around.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start.
Please.
I'm Lauren Smith, and I'm a recent college grad from URI in a poli-sci degree.
Okay, so if we're looking for a poli-sci degree, here you are.
I'm Megan Lappy. I'm a recent graduate from Providence College with double bachelor's in poli-sci and women and gender studies.
Oh, great.
My name's Henry Beck. I'm the state treasurer of Maine. I'm down here to talk to you guys and help out James. I have student debt. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
And I've been the treasurer for about 4 years. And it's just really cool to get to do things like this and work on those kinds of issues.
My name is Paul Guberman. I'm going into my sophomore year at St. Michael's College in Vermont, and I'm a double major in business and political science.
Oh, good.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan St. Hilaire. I'm a recent master's graduate from the University of Rhode Island, and I completed my degree in systems engineering. And I do have debt.
Yeah.
My name is Jacqueline Delfort, and I'm a senior at Guberman High School.
Oh, cool.
Hello, my name is Daniela. I am a current senior at Boston University with a health science major and a public policy analysis minor.
My name is James Diossa. I was the former mayor of Central Falls and now a candidate for general treasurer. Thank you for being here. We really want to look at issues like, how do we help families plan for college so that they don't graduate with a lot of debt? And the other issue is, just like myself, like the treasurer, we still have student debt. And how do we help the current people who are graduating with so much debt that they can't afford a home, they can't make any investments in starting a new business. So that's a big concern. And I know that President Biden's going to announce a big initiative to tackle some of the student debt issues, which is a big first step. But we still have families who are going to be struggling. And I want to have a very open conversation so that you can help inform me, and also I'll take his advice. He's been in the office for 4 years, so I'd love to have a real good conversation around this today. Thank you for participating.
Yeah, so just for you guys in terms of how this is going to look, it'll just be, as James said, a very open dialogue. Feel free to ask questions of them, ask questions of each other, but it'll be sort of a guided discussion just around this concept of college affordability, college indebtedness, the rising cost of tuition, and I think all of you have different experiences with. So I think, we can start and ask for the room, was college or is the cost of college a decision in terms of where you decided to go? And I'll start with you, Danielle.
Right. I think the cost of college is obviously one of the biggest things that you look at originally. It's a really big price tag when you are initiating the process of applying. I think I was very, very lucky, and I had a really good college and career team that, always told me like the cost of it is going to look, crazy, but don't pay attention too much to it. And there's so many scholarships out there that you can apply for and so many other opportunities to look for. But it definitely was obviously a big concern. And I think, for me personally, obviously where the scholarships were definitely enticed me on like what path to go in.
How about you, Jackie?
So as
You're going into it,
yeah. So I'm starting the process of applying places and looking up like different colleges, and I just noticed that I find myself looking at how much financial aid a college can give me over, this college is good for law or for the major I want to go into, which is just so sad that I'm prioritizing financial aid over quality of education at this point because I have to, because the debt that I'm going to get from college is going to stay with me for years and years and years, and it just shouldn't be that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely chose my in-state university, URI, because of the affordability, and I considered a school in Boston. It would have been double the price, so that wasn't an option for me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think price is one of the biggest things you look at when going into college, especially, where you're just going out of high school. That amount of money is really kind of foreign to you, and and you don't know, how you're going to pay that back. So I think that's really one of the biggest things kids look at when going into college, which is really interesting, because that's kind of, you look at the price first and then everything else second, just to determine if you can afford it or not.
You're going to college and law school, right?
Yeah, so my big, price experience was with law school. And I think, I'm hearing what you guys are talking about. It's just really important that at least the state provides some sort of affordable option. Maybe it's not the place exactly you want to go, but whether it's a community college or the state university. Rhode Island is you're in the top 10 for FAFSA applications, which is pretty impressive, which means people are thinking about it and talking about it at an earlier age. And I think for a lot of traditional students who go at a traditional time, you're 17, 18 years old and you're making these big financial decisions. And so the sooner you can have the conversation, if you can have people at the top talking about it, that's really important. So on that, Rhode Island does pretty well. I was impressed to see that.
Going into the application process, I knew that I was going to get a lot of financial aid just because I grew up in a household that made so little annually. And even given so, though, I wasn't anticipating the loans that I would need on top of the financial aid. Like, I got just over half off of PC's tuition, but nobody really ever talked to me in high school or like during the application process about what loans actually meant. So that wasn't something that I was really thinking about very much, yeah.
I definitely use the percentage of financial aid that would be allotted and the tuition cost as the top priority. At the time, my mom was a single mom, and so I knew that it was going to be mostly my income that's going to be paying for it. And I was fortunate enough that when I was little, my father started a college bound fund, and so I had something, but I knew that would have covered about maybe a year and a half. So.
Right. So I know Maine is known for their 529 plan. So how has that worked under your leadership for 4 years?
So I have an advisory role on that plan, but there's some oversight. Same down here. Our plan is called Next Gen. We have a really great matching program from basically a charitable foundation. So we can see the account and match it. I bet when you did, I think what you were sort of saying is even the expected contribution from a family, for like a low-income family, it's still an amazing amount. It's still sort of eye-popping. And so the best that the state can promote saving and planning, it sounds, you don't want to sound out of touch by saying, oh, just save for college. You really can't save for all of it. It's a mix. But you have to have a good college savings program with good oversight, with good oversight and matching. And so that'll be, people don't think of state treasurers when they think about, I think, college debt really. They think about, I don't know, pensions or taxes or something, but it's actually one of the most important roles. And so it really actually matters who's there and who's providing the oversight. So.
Yeah, so in Rhode Island, not only does the treasurer get to see over the 529 plan, but I also would have a seat on the board of the Rhode Island Student Loan Authority, and so there's a lot that, with your input, I can inform policy from a board's perspective. So again, this is such a hot issue today, and your honesty will help guide my decision making.
Now, how many of you know whether your family started a 529 plan? I know Lauren spoke about it, but how many of you know whether this is something that your parents helped use to pay your way through college or have heard of one before?
I mean, I can start.
Yeah,
So both of my parents I've grown up in a Latino household where college is just not something that is like very experienced in my family. I'm first generation, so a lot of everything that has came in with college has been a product of me, looking things up, and then a product of mentors that I've been very, very lucky to have kind of explaining to me. I think my parents do the best that they can with, the little that they know about the American education system, but it's definitely different. It's a different, I think, lifestyle to live because there is such a barrier in not only language, but also a barrier in experience. So I know in my instance, my family did not have that for me. And a lot of it has just been, me trying to figure it out, or me trying my best to use the resources I do have. But again, that just comes with the household that I'm from. So I know it's probably different for everyone.
Yeah, similar with me, first generation. I had to figure it out on my own. It was a very overwhelming experience. And I think that with what I know now, in your experience, I could definitely be more intentional about how do we get younger families to enroll the 529 plan.
Right.
My daughter just turned 3 yesterday. She's already enrolled. So her mom and I've been very active with that fund so that, again, you're not going to cover the whole expense of college, but at least seed it so it's not overwhelming. And that, the hopes is that they graduate college. And if they want to open up a business, they can because they're not burdened by debt. Or if they want to buy their first home, they can because they're not overwhelmed with debt.
Okay.
So I'd love to hear you too.
Yeah. So my parents tried to save as much as they can, but obviously it's not going to be enough. So I've had a job for a few summers now, and I'm trying to save on my own, but I do not have a 529 plan. And I'm going to try to pay for it. It may take a few years, but I'm going to try.
My parents had started saving for my 2 sisters and I, so 3 girls that they had to try to send to college. So I know that my parents didn't have any funding from their parents, so that when they went to college, so I think it made played a big factor in how they saved for our college funds. Although we didn't have the whole thing covered, and I think it's important that you have some type of financial responsibility with your education, because I think that I appreciate my education because I had to pay towards my loans. So.
Yeah, again, I'm a first generation college student as well, and I wasn't, my parents didn't start a 529 plan or anything like that before I went in, and so I knew it was important to start, looking early and seeing what scholarships I could apply for, and so I think it was always expected that I'm either going to take loans or pay out of pocket, and so end of sophomore year, beginning of junior year, I started looking at, what schools, I thought I could target scholarships at, and what different scholarships I could apply for, and how the loan system worked, and so I wasn't fortunate enough to have a 529 plan in place. However, I think I benefited a lot by, applying for different scholarships and starting the process early.
My dad was actually a first generation college graduate, and he was really big into sending me and my sister to school. But unfortunately, he passed away when I was 15, and my mom was really absent during the application process. So I really did that a lot on my own, and I had actually never heard of a 529 plan until right now. So, yeah.
My dad attended college but never finished, and he jumped around a few different colleges, but he saw the debt that I would be in and everything. So when I was born and stuff, he knew that, he's always told me that your minimum for an education is a bachelor's. So he always made sure to try to help me with that. And so I'm very grateful for that. And
So, not everyone goes to college, and so one of the things that, I would love to do is see if we could use the fund once they graduate high school to be able to attend a trade school where they can learn a specific trade. I had a lot of friends who did not go to college, but became electricians, plumbers, and are doing extremely well. And so, seeing that and the results, I want to be able to push in that direction.
I bet everyone's heard of the idea of, a college savings fund, right? The concept, but if you said to someone, well, you should open a 529 tax advantaged investment account, it's going to seem sort of complicated or risky to people. And so we're looking at this right now, the best you can. Try to keep it really simple.
Yeah.
Simple option, safe, low fee. Again, it probably won't be enough for the entire cost, but if people start early and if they feel comfortable using it, that's just really important, because otherwise it's just sort of noise and sort of the last thing on people's mind, and then all of a sudden it's fall semester. So
Absolutely.
Keep it simple. keep it simple and be a cheerleader for it.
And this is something that Treasurer Magaziner has done a lot with. It's something that James is looking to continue. Statistics from the Treasurer's office show that even having less than $400 in a 529 plan makes you significantly more likely to attend and graduate a four-year institution. So it's important at least to get people to know about it. And that's part of what James wants to do from the Treasurer's office, to expand access, to expand knowledge about it, and especially in communities that might be first generation, that might be looking at this in a way and say, I'm not entirely sure. So I think, let me ask, did you take a job or did you feel pressured to take paid internships versus unpaid when you were going through school because of the cost of college?
Most definitely. I believe most of my college experience, I would say half of it I was working part-time, and then the rest I was working full-time, being a full-time student, to make sure, because I also had to pay for my personal bills besides the college tuition, so I had to juggle between the two.
How are you, Megan?
I worked multiple part-time jobs my way through college, and all of my internship opportunities that were available to me were unpaid until I was a fellow last summer with the Department of State, which is a little bit different. But yeah.
Yeah, as far as internships go, I just started, I just finished my fellowship with the Department of State, so that was really the first experience I've had with that. That was a paid internship, but that's a little bit different. But as far as jobs go, I've been working a part-time job since my freshman year of high school, just to save for college, and so I think that's definitely something that kids have to keep in mind. That really have no other choice as far as paying for college goes, other than to save up what you can and work part-time when you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also worked multiple part-time jobs, and I also had to pay for off-campus expenses, rent, groceries, gas. So those all added up, and I chose to take more loans out for the school aspect and use my part-time jobs to pay for all of those living expenses, like you said.
I would love to have an internship, but I don't have one yet because with my age group, it's expected that I'd be unpaid. So right now, I just work a part-time job and then I'm balancing school with that, and I can't afford not necessarily wasting my time, but giving up my time to an unpaid internship because I need the money to save for college.
Right. I think similar to most people at the table, we've all had pretty similar experiences of either working a ton of hours in the summer when you have free time, or then splitting your time between classes and then also like a part-time job. I think the idea of not being able to work during the semester definitely causes some sort of financial stress. And I think me next semester, I know that the ability to work is not going to be there because I will be abroad and you can't work while you're abroad on a visa. So I think definitely it's been in the back of my mind all summer, just trying to save up as much as you can, but also obviously we're all pretty young people and there's things that you want to do, but I think you just have to weigh your pros and cons and try and set yourself up as much as possible before the start of the semester.
And this can be a bit of a more of an open question. What's the conversation among your peers about college affordability, college debt? What are they thinking about? What are their complaints? Is it something that's often talked about? And it's open to whoever.
Well, I'll speak. When I would speak to classmates, we would have, in a sense, similar stories for the finances of we'd be working and having to do this juggling and how stressful it was that not only do you have the, in a sense, coming into adulthood stresses and taking on the new finances that you are having of car expenses and your utility expenses and rent expenses and all that kind of stuff. And then on top of it, you're having to account money for your tuition and make sure you get good grades and account for the textbooks that you have to add on and all of this. And so from my classmates that I've talked with, we've all been really stressed and working under high stress environments because of it.
I have many friends who are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. It's obviously taking a very serious toll on like their mental health and just like their outlook on their future just in general. They really don't know what they're going to do, and it's just really a terrible situation.
Yeah, I think as far as the people that I've talked to go, I don't really think it's something that we've discussed. I know a lot of my peers are just taking out loans and saying, I'll worry about it later. And so it's really not something that I've discussed with a lot of my peers as of yet. But I can't imagine that's a great situation to be in. I feel like it should definitely be discussed more, and the path that people are taking should be more open to discussion, and we should have more conversations about it, and that would really open things up for more people.
Yeah, friends of a lot of different backgrounds. So some of them have full funding to college. Some of them have to pay everything out of their pocket. So I think the discussion kind of changes. I think that my friends that are less fortunate and have to pay a lot more of their debts, we talk about it more than my friends that are a little bit more privileged and have that type of funding. So yeah.
So my friends and I were all very ready to go to college, and we've been trying to work towards it for a while now. Like the past few summers, we've all just had a job. We don't see each other much. We just like, all right, you have work this day, you have work that day. And we've been trying to look out for each other. Like, hey, I found this website that has a bunch of free textbooks. Maybe we can use that instead of paying like $100 for just one book. And so we're trying to help each other out. But again, we don't know if it'll be enough in the end, but we'll see.
Right, I think I have a pretty similar experience to what you were just mentioning, where I have friends that come from all different types of backgrounds and friends that live in all different kinds of living situations. And I do agree that I think it's something that, my friends that are a little more privileged feel more uncomfortable speaking about it, in a sense that, they don't want to come off as like I'm showing off that like I don't have loans and you do. I think it's always easier to have a conversation with someone that has a similar background to you, because you can empathize with each other much more than with someone that you don't share many experiences with. But I do think that it's definitely a very important conversation to have, and I think with the little that I've learned over the years, it's definitely something that now, little cousins that are trying to go to college come to me and ask, like, what does an unsubsidized loan versus a subsidized loan mean? It's little things like that you learn during the process that I think make it much easier later on.
So, you're a young treasurer. How has this experience shaped your decision making, or how you talk to young folks in Maine?
Well, I think you talked about it, you too. It's just amazing the kind of pressure we put on young people to make a decision. There are non-traditional students, right, going onto higher ed, but to say to someone who's 17, 18, sort of plan your career, plan your debt payments, plan where you need to go. It's quite daunting, but I do think it's possible to have those conversations and just be a broken record in the schools early. Can I ask here, did anyone do a transfer from one college to another?
I started off at URI, went to Caesar, and went back to URI.
And so that's quite common, right? In Maine, what we've done, we've passed a law that says, look, if you've left a college for whatever reason and you still owe them money, you're still entitled to get your transcript and your information, because sort of the worst thing that can happen, right, is that you go to school and have debt but don't finish. That's sort of the worst situation. And so we want to make sure that as a matter of law, there are tools for people to transfer, to come back. Things happen, right? People take a year off or that sort of thing. Just because maybe you owe some money to a school, you're still entitled to your records. You can do a transfer, that sort of thing.
So one of the things that, as James mentioned at the outset here, that's been part of the national discussion lately is about college loan forgiveness. And President Biden at some point today is expected to say that $10,000 of student debt is canceled for anyone making less than $125,000 annually. What are your thoughts around debt forgiveness generally, the president's plan, or what you think we can do for students in this loan space and this affordability space to tackle this problem, because the president's move, I'm sure, will help plenty across our state, plenty across the country, but obviously it's not a finalized solution. So let's start at the middle this time.
I do agree that student loan forgiveness is a good idea. I think that there should be limitations, and there should be an making sure that the solution is equitable, so that it's not limited to. I think the $125,000, $125,000 annually is a good marker to start with. But I'd like to see more of the statistics on.
And what do you mean by equitable? Talk about that a little bit.
Making sure that everyone has access to college, and it's not. I don't know. I think I have to do a little bit more research on it. But
No, by all means, tell me what you call.
Yeah, I think there's like she said, definitely more research to be done, because it's such a new idea. Everybody recently is just starting to go to college. Like a couple generations ago, college was such a foreign ideology, and now it's a lot more mainstream. As far as debt forgiveness goes, I think I was talking to my mom about this this morning actually, and I think $10,000 is such an interesting amount to start with, because $10,000, I don't know if it's enough to be like, we're saved, but at the same time it's a lot of taxpayer money going towards it. My mom was like, well, I didn't go to college, and my dad didn't go to college, and so he's like, I kind of feel like now I'm being cheated out of it because I didn't go, and now they're funding these kids to go. But I think everybody should have an opportunity to go. It's such an interesting concept, and I think more research needs to be done about it before any actions are taken.
I think it's a good start. I just think that it's kind of like a simple, surface level solution that isn't really going to make too big of an impact for most people. I don't think it's nearly enough to tackle the student debt in our country, but I of course don't have the answers to these problems, but I do agree. I feel like it is a pretty big burden on the taxpayer, and I don't know, I just don't think it's really enough to tackle the complicated layers of this problem overall. So.
I think $10,000 in a sense is understandable when broaching a new idea, a new way of thinking in this aspect. But in the overall aspect, when I started at URI for in-state tuition with no dorming, it was about $13,000. So you're paying for 1 year, if a little under a year. And while it helps, you still have 3 more years if you're going to a 4-year school, and you still have all this extra debt, not to add the cost of the books. Whenever I would do school, I would always have to judge a minimum of $100 per class in just textbooks. So.
Right, I definitely agree with a lot of the comments that have been made. I think it's a good start, because it shows, the community that, it is a thought that's going through, political minds, and it is an issue, and it's nice and refreshing to see that it is an issue that's being at least, talked about. But I do agree that, $10,000, it sounds great, but then when you really sit down and you look at how much college actually is, I know I pay out of state tuition because I go to school in Boston, and $10,000 really wouldn't do much for me at all. But again, it is a good start, but I think that, it's not an initiative that should stay where it is. There should definitely be changes as time goes on.
I also agree that I think it's a great first step, but that shouldn't be the final step. More should be added on to it, should keep growing, maybe more money, more than $10,000, because obviously people have gotten their master's or their doctorate, and that can be very expensive sometimes. So $10,000 is very small when you look at the big picture and how much money some people are spending on their college tuition.
Treasurer, what's been the sort of plan in Maine to address these sort of things? Where's your office going? Where's your state going?
So on the debt side, for a long time we had what's called the Opportunity Maine Tax Credit, which was it was great. It was pretty complicated and had all these sort of conditions. what the governor of Maine and legislature did last session is they passed a simplified and more expansive, it's a tax benefit, it's a tax credit. So for your loan payments at an accredited institution, $2,500 per tax year, $25,000 in your lifetime. So it's not forgiveness, but it's a tax credit on your return. So you get the money back, basically. And so if someone is able to plan it, it's $25,000 over 10 years, but it certainly helps. It's a reason to be in the state, to file your taxes in the state, that sort of thing. It's showing that we want people with college educations to live and work here and pay taxes. And so we've been a leader on the tax credit side, and I think it's something that other states should explore.
Is it something that your office has found difficulty in getting the knowledge about?
Yeah, and so that's right. The Opportunity Maine, the original program, people didn't really know about it. You go to file your taxes and you have to ask about it and they would forget to remind you. And so our hope is to, again, it's sort of like the 529s, just be a broken record and keep it really simple and accessible, and good will come from it.
So in closing, you have an elected official who's very young, an aspiring elected official here. What's your advice for us that we should take away from all of your experience collectively?
I'll start. I think the biggest thing is just education, because I think, like I said, a lot of kids today take out loans and say, I'll worry about it later. I think that's not the best mentality to have. The I'll figure it out mentality, it doesn't exactly always work out. So I think the biggest thing is just education, really educating these kids on how they're going to pay for college, and if they take out a loan, what the serious financial responsibility of that is, and how that would look over the next 20, 30 years and paying that back. And so I think starting that way would really open up the younger students' eyes on okay, is this something I really want to invest in? Because at the end of the day, college is just an investment in yourself. And so I think if we educate more people, that would really help with the loan issue.
And Paul, from your perspective, where does that education come? Is that from your guidance counselor, from your parents, maybe from somebody visiting the school?
Yeah, I think from an education standpoint, the school should definitely be more involved in that. I think that's a big problem with the education system, is that financial literacy is not really something that's ever taught in any level of schooling. And so I feel like if that was more involved in our education, say in high school, sophomore, junior year, our counselors and our teachers would prepare us saying, okay, college is coming up. Is that an investment you want to make? And what would that look like paying that investment back? And I feel like if we could get a class or two in high school, that would teach us financial literacy and how, we could schedule a program to pay back these loans, that would be a good first step in education.
Yeah, I completely agree with the financial literacy, increasing that in the high school education system. I think that also the idea of knowing exactly what you want to do right before you get into college, or figuring it out when you're in college. I think that I didn't know about so many different career options, so I think that introducing that at a younger age, so that we can get students involved in, saying that not only college degrees are needed, you can also go for trade schools, but showing the difference between what those look like in terms of finances and all of the different aspects that go in with those.
And on financial literacy, Treasurer Magazine have passed legislation to promote more financial literacy in our schools. So it's not going to impact you all, but the younger brothers
Starting
and
this
sisters,
semester.
going to start teaching more in schools.
Yeah. I would love to have more classes that guide me through this whole process, because as of right now, the only way I learn about what I need to do is, I have 10, my guidance counselor will approach me and say, hey, do you have 10 minutes? And that's about all I get. I don't have much time. I love an hour of my day or just a week to sit down and say, hey, you can go into trade school, you can go here, or you can do whatever you want, not go to college, start your own business. Any of those options. I feel like I wasn't really given a choice. It was hey, you need to go to college, and I figured it out, and I was okay.
I think, like I mentioned before, I was really, really lucky in the college and career team that I had, and also very lucky that I went to a small school. I know it's different when you go to a large public school. And I can definitely attest to the difference that it makes when you have a group of people that are willing to sit with you or stay after school with you and like really just go through every single financial aid package that you have. I think it makes it a huge difference. But back to the question that you had originally asked, which was what kind of recommendations we have for you guys. I think one of the things that I think is really, really important to just keep in mind is just the huge diversity that we see in both, backgrounds, but also knowledge. When it comes to programs like these, like you said, keeping it simple, but then also trying to find a way to communicate that with different communities. Communicating a program like this to, for example, an American household is very different than communicating it to a, Latino background family. Some families that just don't have any experience at all and have a lot of fear with taxes and a lot of fear with, doing something that the government then can for whatever reason reprimand them for. So I think just keeping that in mind that, there's a wide variety of people in both states. I personally don't know very much about the population in Maine, but I know that there's a very large diversity in Rhode Island. So I think just keeping it in mind that, there's a lot of differences that need to be kept in mind when making these decisions.
I agree with Paul in the education aspect. When I was in high school, I was in my junior year trying to pick my classes, and I wanted to pick, thankfully they did have a financially literate class, but because I've already progressed past it, I was told I couldn't go back down and learn about personal finances and all that kind of stuff. So I would say definitely the education aspect, but also I think hearing from students, keeping the open discussion, the open forum, regularly talking, I think that will give you a more interior visual to what is going on and the approaches that we're facing if it's done more regularly.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody has been saying about financial literacy and just kind of like engaging students from like an earlier age and like thinking about their options. But I also agree, I think that what you're doing here today is really important and should definitely continue in the future. And I think it's one thing to, sit here and have a conversation with us, but to then, walk away and not forget about what everyone's saying. Because I know if you were to be elected, there would obviously be so many things that you would be juggling and thinking about. But I think that, Rhode Island's youth is one of like the best things, the most important and worthwhile thing that you can really invest in, because we know that young minds are really our future. So,
any advice for these young leaders?
Just know that it's all challenging and difficult, but you should be proud of your education. No one can take it away from you. And we do need good people like James to figure it out. So,
Well, thank you everyone for your time. It was very helpful, informative, but more than that, inspiring to see all of you take very bold steps in getting a higher education. And I know Rhode Island will be better because of it. And believe it that this session, if I'm elected, I will never forget about, and I will do everything I can to help the younger generations make college or a trade school more accessible for our future. So thank you again.